you've ever felt nostalgic about the M9, even though you kind of hated it in the service, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Guys, like and comment section makes me question my will to live. Now, today we are talking about the M9A4. So if you're familiar with the M9, you will be pretty close to understanding where the M9A4 comes from. It is an update to the M9. It was put forward to the United States military as a possible replacement for the M9, specifically within the MHS, which was a competition to see which handgun would get selected as the U.S. military's new handgun. Now, it did not get selected. The M17 was selected. However, the M9A4 is a very compelling weapon for a variety of reasons. So today we're going to be talking about it. We're going to be reviewing it, delving into it. Hope you guys are going to enjoy as we talk about the M9A4. Now, before we get into it, of course, I have to thank all the biggest sponsors of the channel. The biggest sponsor of the channel is Primary Arms. If you're looking to buy great optics at a great price and my most favorite pistol optic in the world, the HTX-1, go and check them out. They have everything you could possibly want. We cannot recommend them enough. A big thank you to Primary Arms. If you tell them, you know, I heard that March was going to be Laffy Taffy March, you might get Laffy Taffy. We actually don't know. Go and check them out. Guys, of course, Henry Repeating Rifles is our other sponsor. We are a huge fan of Henry Repeating Arms. It is made in America or not made at all. And even better, there's nothing more American than a lever action rifle. You can get any type of lever action rifle you want. Hundreds of different options for whatever you may need, from teaching your young kids to hunting big game. They got it for you. Go check out their catalog. And of course, check out henrythumb.com for a very special surprise. We can't talk about it on YouTube. Trust me, link's right below. Of course, guys, if you want to get better at shooting, we recommend dry fire. Mantis will turn your weapon into a dry fire machine. Go and check them out. They are amazing. And finally, all ammunition is sponsored for by AAC. With all those things being said, talk is cheap, ammunition is expensive. So we're going to be going to the range yesterday with a younger, more handsome version of myself, and of course John, to test out the weapon. Then we'll get into the autistic portion. We're now here a day earlier, much more handsome, as we're on the range ready to do our range session with the M9A4. Now, both me and John served in the military. John in the Army, me in the Air Force. And the M9, when we entered, was the standard handgun and no longer is of the United States military.
That being said, we both use different handguns throughout our time within the military, but I've always had a very soft spot in my heart
for the M9. I found it to be a robust, a reliable weapon, certainly a little bit dated in certain aspects, but when I look at the M9A4, I like it.
Yeah, I liked it a lot more than I thought I would, for sure, because everyone talks smack on it because they were 30-year-old guns by the time we got in, you know, so yeah, they were rattly, they were worn out, but they are good.
When I quelled on my M9, the M9 they gave me, the rear sight was bent completely in. And I was like, hey, my rear sight's bent. And they're like, okay. I was like, so? Can I like get one with a sight that works? And they're like, no, we're out. But the M9 is a cool gun. The A4 did a lot of good upgrades. We're going to talk about those, but mostly today we're going to be shooting. But it should be noted that John's old man smoked a lot of people with the M9, which is f***ing cool.
This is definitely a favorite amongst USEC operators, especially like the level 1 to 10.
Yeah, it's a standard issue.
Yeah, whenever they're doing their rat runs. Usually they run the A3 version, but this is close enough. Yeah, this and a bunch of M8A2, and they're just running around hiding in bushes.
Right, first drill we're going to be doing today is just going to be a basic draw and 2 rounds. Pretty simple. It's just a good overall draw stroke to test your ability to, you know, control recoil, and it's a good test. So that will be our very first one. How's the M9 just performing in its most basic role as a service handgun? Now, this is a G series, which means there is no safety, there's merely a decocker. Now, there are internal safeties. So when I hit the decocker, it's gonna drop the hammer, and then that first shot is gonna be double action, which means it's going to cock the hammer, release it, after which it will be in single action. So it's a little bit of a learning curve because that double action pull is long. So I'll show you guys how long that double action pull is. You wanna come focus in on it? So this first trigger pull, it's just a little odd, kind of getting used to, especially for Glock guys, but it's a quirk of it. I think it's easy to train through. I think people make a bigger deal about double action, single action.
It's pros and cons. Like your first trigger pull, if the hammer's down, it's going to be a heavier, longer trigger pull. but subsequent shots, whenever it's in single action, are really crisp.
Beautiful. Okay, so we're just doing draw 2 shots. Okay, ready?
Just draw 2 rounds?
Yeah.
All right, shooter ready, stand by. 140.
Cool. John, you're up.
You have hammer down?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. Oh, did I have hammer down? Let's hit the replay.
Okay, all right.
Shooter, you understand the course fire?
Yep.
Stand by.
Oh, that sucks.
It's just because John hasn't been practicing.
Well,
So that's a 175.
Okay,
One more time, one more time.
One more time, one more time.
Shooter ready.
Yep.
Stand by. 143. There you go, buddy.
Still lower than it should have been.
Yeah, but it's fine. A-zone. Okay, next up we have bill drill, 7 yards, 6 rounds, and it's a good drill to show recoil control, to practice it, and to generally up your pistol skills. You ready, buddy?
Yep. Said 7 yards, so
Yep.
back up a little bit.
Stand by. 288. Good shooting, bus.
Shooter ready, stand by. 216.
But
bugging me.
3-1. One's a delta. Yeah, so it looks like I lost still.
That adds like 7 seconds, right?
It does. It's a good time except for that. Next up, we're gonna be trying out the Mozambique drill. This is gonna be 2 to the chest, 1 to the head, because you never know, or as the Marines call it, failure to stop. All right, ready, John?
Shooter ready, stand by. 167.
All right, you got enough for 1. Stand by. Nice, 161. Just killers. Now, the Beretta M9, the M9A4, is a great host for suppressors. This is due to the locking block design, and the gun is just easier for the gun to run. And in fact, the gun doesn't always need a booster in order to work. Most pistol suppressors have a small Nielsen device, a booster, that adds spring pressure right here to have an opposite reaction to the recoil spring of the pistol. This allows the weapon to cycle. But the Beretta M9 is such an easy weapon to work the suppressor that you can even direct thread it. You might need to drop the spring weight a little bit, but it is very cool. So I'll show you right here is how well the M9A4 runs with a suppressor. Now right here we do have the new Huxworks 9K Ti, which honestly, it's a really cool can. So let's go get that little guy threaded. This is just 1/2x28 threads. There are a lot of discussions online about thread pitch and what you should use. We're not going to talk about that today. Now, first things first, we're going to fire supers, and then we'll fire subsonics. Subsonics are rounds that do not break the sound barrier, far quieter with a suppressor. In comparison, we'll be firing a few rounds through John's Glock first, so you can hear the sound difference.
All right, so 3 rounds, obviously unsuppressed.
Okay, let's hear the supersonic suppressed. Okay, now let's go ahead and, do you see that catch? We're gonna be firing subsonics. These are G9. Okay, subsonics. That's ridiculous. All right, you wanna try them?
Sure. Oh, finally got a jam.
Oh, classic suppressor usage. As you fire suppressor more and more, we have fired a couple hundred rounds. Gun's gonna get dirty. Pistol suppressors do have some problems. It's not like a rifle suppressor. More than likely, John's probably just limp wristing it. He's a little weak. We're gonna run a bill drill with the suppressor. Just, it's fun.
Stand by.
Yeah, up. Oh no. Guns get a little dirty, so we're gonna go ahead and switch over to supers. Just give it a little bit more power.
167.
So I got, it's like Charlie, Rest Alpha. Not bad, not bad. You're up, buddy. I started with hammer cocked. This thing is hot. Yeah, it is. 167. Nice.
You were just compressed right here?
Yeah. Shooter, are you ready?
Yep.
Stand by. Nice. 150. Good shooting, John.
Yeah, I've noticed with the can, just a little bit of spit back every now and then, but not.
Yeah, that's pretty common with a pistol can. What John is saying is you're gonna get carbon shooting back out towards your eye. Really important to have some eye pro. It's not the most, pleasant experience. Always shooting with the suppressor. MBD. That is so much fun. So we've done a lot of shooting. Let's do talking, because in fact, this weapon did compete to replace the M9 in the MHS program, along with the Glock 45 the M9A4, and of course the M17. Which one? Let's talk about it. Let's see how it actually performed. How does it stack up to these modern weapons nowadays? Can the old, what did they call them, pizza shooters back in the day? Remember, because they'd break in half?
I wasn't around back then, so I don't know.
We're gonna talk to your dad about this. I'm just gonna bring your dad out, hire him instead. Let's talk about it. Do you remember? I think the best thing we can say right off the bat is that the M9 and the A4 obviously have a very unique operating principle. And because of that, there are certain things that the M9 is better for and certain things that the M9 is not better for. But suffice to say, when it comes to the recoil impulse of the M9 and the M9A4, it is very smooth. The locking block that is employed by the M9A4 is a very smooth shooter. You'll find that the recoil on the M9 and the A4 to be very pleasant compared to a lot of handguns that utilize a more traditional Browning action, such as a Glock or what have you. So that is one thing that is nice about the M9, is that it really does set itself apart in terms of its recoil, to say just for one. Now, the M9 had many problems. I feel like the M9A4 definitely solved most of those problems. So let's go ahead, let's delve into this. Let's talk about it from tip to butt, just like my Navy guys love. Talk about what makes the M9A4 so good. Now, if you're not familiar with the M9A4, it is a semi-automatic firearm, loads from a magazine. The magazine can hold 18 rounds. That's one more than a Glock 17, which makes it what? Makes it better. I'm just kidding. But this thing is legendary. Let's go ahead and start here. So at the very end of the M9A4, we do have a threaded barrel. Now, this is a welcome addition for several reasons. If you didn't know, the M9, specifically the M9A4, works very, very well with the suppressor. In fact, so well that many times it can run without a booster. Most suppressors require a Nielsen device in order to function. Now, a Nielsen device will be helpful because you typically do have to lower the recoil spring poundage a little bit to make them run without a booster. But that's to say that due to the linear, that is the direct kind of rearward motion of the slide and of the barrel of the recoil forces, it is very easy to suppress these weapons. It's because of that it is really fun, in my opinion. We've done a ton of shooting with it with a suppressor, so we're not going to beat that dead horse, other than to say having a threaded portion on the barrel is definitely welcome and was something that's definitely missing from like the original M9 and many other military handguns. Now, on the threads, you'll notice there's an O-ring. This is going to keep the thread protector from backing off, and is also very helpful with a suppressor as well. Now, when it comes to the barrels, Brett has always made very good barrels, and that definitely stands to reason the M9 barrels would be quite good. Now, compared to other M9s, these are made in the United States. There have been some issues with the barrels in the past that should be noted. Just kind of odd finishes on the inside of the barrel. Looks like, however they were making these barrels, there were some problems that were occurring that were affecting the accuracy and the finish on the inside of the barrels. Now, I didn't see that with mine. I did have some initial issues, but those ended up working themselves out, and it was mostly due to the fact that I had done a drop test on this gun about a year ago. So that was on me for the crowning. So no problems that we've had from the factory with our Beretta barrels. In fact, they've been very accurate. I don't have anything bad to say about the barrels. And in fact, in all my time in the military, the M9 barrels lasted for a very, very long period of time, and that seems to be the case with the M9A4. Now, at this point, we have about 5,000 rounds on the M9A4, which isn't as many people have put on them, but the weapon is holding together extremely well. So, if we take this down right now, kind of talk about a couple different wear points when it comes to the barrels. So, this locking block right here is going to be the weakest component on the M9. And in fact, this is something that every time you clean your weapon, you should inspect it for any type of cracks. If it's gonna fail, it's gonna fail within the first couple thousand rounds. Just keep an eye on it. They usually don't, but the nice thing about the M9 system is that at this point, millions and millions of these guns have been shot ad nauseum to the point of failure, to where we know the failure points on the M9 extremely well. So that's really nice when we go to the M9A4, because it feels like a very familiar weapon in terms of diagnosing any typical problems that you might have. And those problems are the locking block and, of course, the extractor. However, the extractor was upgraded in the M9A4, and in my experience, I haven't seen any issues with it. So I'm very happy with that upgrade that they made. So barrel right here, working great. Take a look at the locking blocks and make sure that it is all staying together. Now, the one thing I don't actually like so much about the M9A4 is going to be the finish. Let me put this together really quick. So funny enough, always kind of keep that little guy captured. When I was first qualifying on the M9 in the military, guys would not keep that capture as they tried to put it on, and then they'd end up just launching that spring. It's always a bad time. Don't launch springs. When it comes to any type of coating on a gun, I definitely am a big fan of bluing. I know it's not always the best, but I found that the PVD or the DLC-like coatings that you're seeing on guns nowadays, like we have right here, tend to wear really fast. So whether it be the Glock 45, the M17 M18, the M9A4, the FN509, I find that the finish on these just doesn't last nearly as long as the older finishes. And that's definitely true of the M9A4, where you can see some pretty good wear from just shooting it, drawing it from the holster, and all of that. So that is kind of not my favorite, although it does look very attractive. I'm just a bigger fan of those earlier finishes that you saw. I don't know that these newer finishes are necessarily better. Now, moving from there, you have the slide right here. What makes the M9 so cool is going to be how open the slide design is for allowing rounds to exit, debris to get out, possibly to get in. But in my experience, I found the M9 to be very, very reliable and the open top slide design to be very good. Now, you might think that by getting rid of that material, that the M9 might be a very light weapon. In fact, it is not. It's a very heavy weapon. The M9 weighs about 33 ounces compared to like 22 for a Glock 17. So compared to your typical handgun, it is heavier. Now, due to the recoil action in the M9, as well as the weight, that means this is a very smooth shooting firearm. So when you're firing it, it does feel really good. The recoil does feel really light compared to many other 9mm service handguns that are out there. And with the addition of a much thinner grip compared to the M9, that makes for a very, very comfortable shooting experience, but we'll get into that in just a moment. If we come down to the frame right here, the frame is an alloy compared to the steel slide, and if you notice, we finally have Picatinny rail. This was added on the M9A1, but it is of course great to have it on the A4 for any types of lights, packs, whatever you might need for your LARPing needs. This is great. The problem that the M9A4 suffers from, that the M9 also suffered from, is going to be holster compatibility. When it comes to duty holsters, pretty much the only option is Safariland. So when we have our Safariland holsters right here, there's not a lot of options when it comes to an M9A4 with a light, even less for an M9 with an optic, which sucks. You can get the typical SLS, which is a hood that rotates, but for a real combat holster, you definitely want an ALS system. And there just really isn't an option for an M9 with an ALS with a light. And that's a damn shame. I wish Safariland would support that more, or that another company would get more into it to make good combat holsters for these, but you just see a lot of Kydex, so that kind of sucks. And that also brings us over to the optic mounting. So compared to earlier Berettas, this M9A4 is ready for optics right out of the gate. The problem is that, there were certain guns that just worked really well with optics, like the Glock was a shoo-in to throw an optic on. It's just a big old brick. But with the M9A4 and the M9, it's such an elegant design on the slide that there's not a lot of material to work with. And because of that, the optics tend to sit very, very high on the gun. Now, there are many aftermarket manufacturers that make some really awesome, like low profile optic mounts, and I would recommend them. But like the ones that you get from the factory, your optics end up sitting very high. I like my optics to be a little bit lower to the gun. So that kind of is a bummer to me. Now, moving back to our sights right here, we do have night sights. Night sights are cool, but I've never really seen the point to them. If you're going to be shooting at night to where you need night sights, you want to be able to identify your target. So you're going to have a light. If you have a light, then you can see your sights anyhow. I get it. Low light, it can be good, but it's not bad. I just don't prefer it necessarily. Now, moving back from there, we do have our decocker. Now, the M9A4 is a G series weapon. What that means is that on the older M9s, you'd flip this down, it would stay down, and that was safe. And then you have to pull it off safe and also decock the gun. On our G series, it is merely a decocker, which means when I hit that decocker, it's going to drop the hammer, and the weapon is off safe. So that when I fire this, decock it, I draw it out of my holster with a round in the chamber, that first shot is going to be double action, after which it will cycle, then every shot after that is a single action. So the M9A4 is a double action / single action design. And the G series is awesome. This is what the M9 should have been. I'm glad that they did it with the M9A4. Now, just like any M9, whether it be a Handgun Tactical or a nice Beretta Custom, I've always found that the roll pin that holds my right safety in place always ends up working itself out. And that's true of the M9A4 as well. It's a little quirk. I know you can replace them, but I haven't had a single M9 that I've seen where the roll pin right here hasn't wanted to walk out. It's annoying. It's not that big of a deal, but I don't know. It just kind of always irked me that they can't get that little bitch the same place. Now, beyond that, you might wonder, well, the gun doesn't seem terribly safe because now the hammer's down. So if you hit the back of the hammer, can you possibly ignite the primer? That's a great question. The M9 is actually a very safe weapon. There's actually a block right here. So if you notice, when I'm pulling the trigger, at the very rear, this block is going to lift. That's a firing pin block. So when that lifts at the very end of the trigger pull, that actually allows the hammer then to strike the primer. With that in place, nothing can happen. So even if somehow the hammer slipped, without pulling that trigger to the rear, it's not going to lift that safety mechanism out of place. It's a very, very safe action. I'm a big fan of the safeties that the M9, the M9A4 have in place for a military type situation or military type usage. Going to some other controls here, the M9 is very easy to take down. So all you're gonna do is press the takedown lever right here, then you simply rotate it down, releases the slide, and then you're good to go. And then just lock it back, pop that back into place, drop the slide. Very easy to take these down. Huge fan of the takedown. Obviously, from there, we do have our slide release. So you can lock the slide to the rear. Slide release is easy to use. You can actuate it with your right hand, left hand. There's so many different methods to reloading. A lot of guys, what they'd end up doing is, if your hands are large enough, you can simply drop the mag, next mag in, and then you're good to go. But what some guys do, if your hands are a little bit smaller after you drop that mag, what some guys will do is they'll mag in, and then that same hand, kind of like in 1911, they'll go ahead and drop it that way. I missed that one. Life's over. So that's basic manual arms when it comes to the M9A4. Now, in the MHS program for the military, they wanted these guns to be modular. On the M9A4, the grips are very thin. This came from a lot of the earlier and competition models that Beretta made. So to make this modular, they have grips that add girth to this. I really don't think it needs it. I think it feels really good as it is, but if you do, it is a modular design, so that's not why it lost in the MHS. Who knows why it lost exactly. But this is very easy to change these up. These are all removable, and you can, if you got monster hands, and if you get monster hands, well, you can make the M9A4 fit your hands. Magazine release is simple, reversible, no issues there. Let's go ahead, let's try the trigger now. So we're gonna do what we always do, and we're going to ghost that trigger. Now, the M9A4 does have a new trigger package with a shorter reset compared to the earlier M9. So the trigger pull is actually really nice. So for the single action trigger pull, we're gonna go ahead and fill into that. So you've got about 7 millimeters of play. Once you hit that wall right there, it's a clean 4.5 pound let off. And let's go ahead and let's feel that from the reset. From the reset, it's not a very tactile reset, which I'm not a huge fan of, but it is a short reset. Now with the double action pull, it's smooth, it's long, it's about 9-10 pounds. So nothing to write home about. It is a good double action pull. That's what you want from it. So the thing I'll say about the trigger is good trigger. Reset is a little sloppy. I wish it was a little bit more crisp. You can obviously train through it. There are many shooters like J.D. Ricarza who shoot the M9 like a freaking beast. So train with your weapon and you're still going to be good with your weapon. Next up is going to be magazines. So many different magazines. This was one I got from Langdon Tactical back in the day. It says not today, Ron Jeremy. I thought that was pretty cool. So 18 rounds, Metgar made, awesome. The stock M9A4 have a tan base plate that hold 18. These are all made by Metgar, which is a company in Italy. Makes sense. Yeah, I really don't have anything bad to say. The M9 magazines are very reliable. Even these surplus military magazines were great. So you're in a good place. If you want to buy more magazines for the M9A4, there are a ton of good surplus magazines that you can buy from Metgar that really aren't that expensive. So a big plus one when it comes to magazines for the M9A4, plus 18 rounds is pretty awesome. Now, when it comes to the M9A4 as a whole, how do I feel about the weapon? The gun is accurate. The gun recoils really well. I'm not as fast with it as like a Glock, but that's mostly because I don't have nearly as many rounds on the M9A4 as I do a Glock 17. That being said, if this was issued to me, if this was the only handgun I had, I would not be at all sad. I consider the M9A4 to be a really, really good handgun and perhaps one that should have been adopted. I think it would have been a very simple transition over to the M9A4, and I find this to be a very reliable, a very accurate, that's due to the system that it uses, and a very precise weapon. In fact, even the M9 was considered to be a more accurate weapon than what we needed for combat, and the M9A4, I'd say, was even tighter and it holds even better groupings than the M9. So I'm a huge fan of the M9A4. So when it comes to the M9A4, it's actually going to be a solid buy. When I think of the M9, I think of reliability. I think of a really good handgun. You know, for those of us who served in the military, you know, we were issued those first M9s from like the 80s, and they were clapped out, shot out like crazy, but they still shot. Nowadays we have M17s, and I just don't know that the M17s are gonna have that same track record of longevity as the M9 does. Now, the M9A4, I have every belief in my bones that the M9A4 will have the same longevity as the M9, which is really good. So if you're an M9 fan, I think the A4 is a definite buy. Now, the peanut butter color is not going to be for everybody. That being said, if you don't like it, you can buy the M9A3, which is a black version. Very, very similar. Get that instead. I love the M9A4. I don't know what else to say about it other than to say if you're looking for a handgun, whether it be home defense, carry, what have you, this is a definite buy. You know, it is heavier than many other modern service handguns that are out there, but what do they say? Heavy's reliable, and if you run out of ammo, you can hit somebody with it. Is that good legal advice?
I think so.
All right, guys, that's all we got for you today. Keep watching. Tons more great stuff coming on Grand Thumb. The M9A4 is a great handgun. If you got one, shoot it. If you got an M9, you know what? Do a couple upgraded trigger jobs from LTT, and you're gonna be feeling happy as well. I love this handgun. It's not often I'm a huge fan of something I've reviewed, but the M9A4 definitely tickles that fancy for me. Ladies and gentlemen, we got nothing else for you. Final thing for you is going to be dad advice. What is the dad advice for today? Dad advice for today is teach your children. Teach them to shoot, teach them to be moral, teach them to be good, because you know what? Everything that you've learned in your life, it's time to pass it on. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for watching. We got nothing else for you. POV, you just walked into my house. Did I get it?
I think you got it.
No way. Oh my God.
You got it.
That was awesome. I hit it. Dude, you know, what can we say about Air Force Special Warfare just overall being a better shooter?
Let's not get into that.
You are actually a better shooter than me, legitimately. Legitimately, John is a better shooter. I want to be very clear about that. POV, it's 2025, and the Marine Corps adopted the M9A4, and you're a Chinese soldier in the Philippines. Let me try that one more time.